Hello, everyone. So welcome to the Plume launch for the Society of Women Engineers and UMass um, Introduction to Computing and Engineering Days. So tonight, we're going to start giving you some of the data for a little mystery that we're going to be trying to solve over the next 10 days or so. And so what we're going to be trying to do is figure out why some patients that are, with the doctor are getting sick in a small town. It's a small town of just about 1,000 people, small community, and they know each other very well. Uh, but we're going to analyze data, ask some questions, and specifically, we're going to first try and figure out some of the health impacts of different contaminants, so why these patients are getting sick. And then we're going to analyze some data to trace the source of those contaminants. So how are those contaminants getting to the people and causing them to be sick? And then we're going to go a step further and research some of the historical practices that have been out there that lead to his current problems, especially in terms of water pollution in today's world. So, this is an environmental engineering, a water resources type problem that we're going to be exploring. And so you'll hopefully get to see, data analysis and the fun things you can do by exploring data and the questions you can answer. So tonight specifically, for the first part of the challenge, what we're interested in figuring out is why some people are getting sick. So like I said, the residents, this community where people are getting sick is very small. It's just about 1,000 people. And for tonight, for the next couple of days, you're going to pretend to be a physician in the community. But before we get into that, I want to go ahead and give a quick overview of kind of the timeline and some of the things that we're going to be doing to get to our final answer. So tonight, we're here on Wednesday. We're doing the launch meeting, and I'll go ahead and post this for the people that can't join us. And then the goal is that if you're doing this synchronously with us, that tomorrow night, Thursday, before you go to bed, that you submit what you think that you've done, taken the data that I'll share tonight, you've done some research, thought about it, and hopefully you'll come up with an idea of what you think is the cause of the patient's illness. And so the idea is that you'll submit that before you go to bed to Engine Diversity at umass.edu. I'll also give you my personal email address, but I'm getting so many emails a day that I won't lose it if you send it here. And then just to also come up with an idea about why they're getting exposed. So that's tonight, and we'll come back to that. On Friday, I'll give you another data set and ask you to try and figure out the source based on that data of the cause of the illness. On Sunday, I'll ask you to submit your guess there, or your educated deduction there is a better way to say it. And then on Monday, I'll release some additional data to help you refine your answer, check it to see if you think you're, to confirm that you're on the right track, or to adjust if you need to. And then you'll submit that answer on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, I'll tell you the answer, and I'll do another video and talk about it a little bit, and then ask you to do a little research on some other water quality environmental issues that you can find on the internet. So that's kind of how the week is going to go, or the 10 days is going to go. On Friday, we'll come back together. We'll figure out a time for that works for the people that want to do this synchronously. So we can talk about your analysis, your data, some things like that. And of course, I'll be happy to iterate back and forth on email and things like that. But it'd be nice to have a chance to talk kind of face-to-face, or as much as we can, via Zoom. And in between, as I'm giving you new data and things like that, I'm also going to give you some fun little mini water lab experiments, if you will, that you can do in your kitchen, just to get a better understanding of water and how it moves and how it acts and why it moves the way it does based on its physical properties. So that's the goal for the next couple of weeks, and I'll post this for you. And then the other thing that I wanted to note is that we also have a Google Drive where I'll be posting everything. And so I will drop this in the chat, but this is our Google Drive where I'll be posting your new data sets so that you can start on the next task. And here are the goals that we'll have. So are there any questions before we go any further? All right, so I'm going to stop share. I will drop that Google Drive in the chat, and I'm also going to drop the email address for everything in the chat too, and I'll put my email address too. So we're going to go back to posing the problem and trying to figure out what you need to. So again, you have this small community and you're a physician in the small community. And you've been caring for a number of patients over the past couple of years at least, and they have some very unique symptoms that have you kind of stumped. And so I will put those symptoms up on my screen now. And actually, I'm going to just add a, sorry, I'm going to pull up a different file so I can not show you everything at the same time. I wasn't thinking about that. Okay, so the symptoms that you've been seeing are here. So they've come in, and over the last couple of years, they've been developing warts, these dark patches on the palms of their hands and then on the soles of their feet. And now, as time's gone on, in addition to having those dark warts, they're getting some tingling and some numbness in the hands and the feet. And now they're starting to have your patient that showed these symptoms the earliest, started having the dark patches, the warts on the hands and the feet. Now that patient is coming in and they're just really weak. And so you're really trying to figure out what's making them sick. And so you've been starting to collect some additional data to help figure that out. And so what I'd like to ask now is, as a physician, what questions would you ask? Like, how would you try and start figuring out what might be the cause of them getting sick? And so Allison, if you want to ask any questions, you're welcome to.
So what would the physician be asking, like how long the person's had those symptoms?
Yep, that's a great question. That is exactly one of the first things that ask, like when did these symptoms start? What's been the progression, the time progression? Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't seem like something in my experience that I'd ever seen anyone having dark colored warts. So it would seem like it'd be a little unusual.
Yeah, and so they'd be thinking about medical history and their knowledge and thinking about that. They might start asking just general health questions and things like that, especially if you have a couple of patients that are experiencing the same things. Can you think about questions that you might ask there, or that a physician, what would a physician just ask you in general?
Like, have you traveled anywhere unusual?
Mm-hmm.
Or have you been anywhere unusual, like in terms of hiking, or like maybe going underneath the ground or something, where you'd go somewhere, an unusual place where they could have picked something up?
Yeah, exactly. So different things that you might have been exposed to. So the doctor kind of did look into that and was asking questions, and we're going to have a woman doctor. She hasn't found anything in terms of a common pattern of where these patients have traveled, in terms of that. What else might be a common thing amongst the patients?
What was your question again?
Yeah, so what else, that common theme. So you have this group of patients. So what else might you start asking about that they might have in common?
Are they getting worse?
They all are getting worse. They're progressively getting a little bit worse.
Is it uncomfortable, like the whatever they have, or is it making them feel uncomfortable?
It's mostly, it's the weakness, which is, it's bothering them, that numbness, that tingleness, it's annoying. And then this weakness is just really causing some issues.
Does everyone in the household have the same issue?
No. So that's one of the confusing things. What she's found out is that all of the patients with these conditions, they do live in the same neighborhood. So they're in the same area where they live. And it's a neighborhood where it's rural. The houses are kind of far apart, and they're all on private wells. So they all have their own water sources, but they're in the same neighborhood. But the weird thing there is that not everybody in the house has these conditions. So in one case, for example, one of her patients is a man, and he's lived in the house that he's living in for 10 years. And he just got married about 10 months ago, and his wife is fine. She moved in with him, after they got married. And so he's living in the same house, and she's fine. The other thing that the doctor has figured out is that, and of course, the doctor doesn't have her patients. There's other people that live there that she doesn't know, so she doesn't have all of the data. But she is the doctor for a couple that moved in a couple years ago. So far, they're fine. There's nothing. So what she's found is that the patients that she is treating have been, in the neighborhood for a while, but not everybody in the same household is getting sick. What else might? So
Have there
great
been any
question.
like oil spills or like chemical releases from like a train going by or
Yep. So nothing that's been in the news, nothing that the doctor has heard from. She's checked in, with the town and the county to see if there's anything that they just didn't put out in the media, broadly, but nothing has come up.
how about
And
like local fields, like maybe like pesticides that they apply?
yep. So uh, there's no field, it's pretty just a small New England residential area. So there's not a lot of farming, nearby outside the city limits. But so she hasn't looked into that very, very much. That could be something that she'd want to look into more. The other thing she's been asking them, do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you have underlying conditions like that? So she's ruled out cancer. So there's no cancer. There's not anything that's very sticking out to her that way. Some of them, most of them have not smoked at all. There's a few that were smokers and that have quit. One like 2 years ago, another 5 years ago. She's asked about alcohol consumption. So some of them don't drink at all. Some of them drink socially, and then one has said, "Oh, I'm a moderate drinker." So she's been asking those questions. She's asked about family history and
Yeah,
diabetes.
that's what I was wondering, the family history
Yeah.
this has happened.
Yeah, so none of them have reported their family, that their parents or grandparents, that in their family trees, they haven't seen this before. So they're very stumped, and she's really stumped. Um, Anything else you can think of to ask?
I can't think of any more.
Yeah, the only other thing that she's been, and it's not something that she kind of just stumbled on it. So the only other thing that she's realized is that everybody she knows of that has these symptoms all work at the same factory. And it's a factory that does wood processing. In particular, they're conditioning the wood to preserve it. And so she has found that, but she's talked to the factory, and so far, she doesn't know. She hasn't heard of all of the factory workers. She doesn't know, but she's kind of informally said, "Oh, well, like, does everybody at the factory have this?" And that's not the case. It just seems to be this group of people that she's been treating. So she's been asking around.
So what's the total number of people that are sick
Yeah,
with this?
she's been, but she knows of, she's dealing with about 5 patients.
And is she the only physician in the area, or has she talked to other physicians?
Yeah, so that I don't, she hasn't gone further, right now on that. So she, so one thing she needs to do, right, is to go out and talk to her colleagues and find out if there's others. So she'll do that and have that information. The one thing so to get to the bottom of this, the one thing she needs to do, so that's the kind of like the next question. What does she need to do? So one is to ask more questions, get more data. So part of that data is finding out from other physicians, from the town, is this being reported? Maybe find out at the factory. Are there more cases at the factory? Canvass the neighborhood. Is there more in the neighborhood? And to do some of that, she needs to get kind of permission from the town and the company.
Could she get asked for like a water sample of like, just ask the people that work at the factory for like a sample of their water and the people from their homes and have that water analyzed?
Yes, so getting some water data, but first she needs to have an idea about what to look for in the water.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So what she's going to do, or what she has done already, what I can share with you tonight, is she has ordered for all of her patients a urine analysis, a complex urine analysis, so she can really see everything that is being processed by their body and being released in their urine. So it will give her kind of an underlying view of if there's anything that seems off in terms of toxins or things that they've been exposed to. So I'm going to pull that up and show you the data. And again, I wasn't thinking about view for tonight. Okay, so let me share this. All right, so the task for all of the students is to, with this baseline knowledge that you have of the doctor's, 5 patients that are sick, what she's been able to glean so far about where they live, their families, other incidences in where they live, where they work, other incidences where they work, what she knows about, spills and, potential other exposure by traveling to the same place or living by a farm field, that has pesticides applied regularly, or an orchard or something like that. She's also ordered this test. And so you have this data, and the challenge is to combine the data that's here and think about these different chemicals or potential toxins, if you will, that are often looked for in urine, and they can also be looked for in blood, but the urine is a little less invasive analysis, if you will, and is very common. And to do some online research about the different symptoms that are presenting themselves, which are those dark warts, the tingling, and the weakness, and to figure out what is the root cause. And then with that information, she can go to the town and she can say, okay, we need to get some more data about where these patients of mine are getting exposed to this contaminant. So our first step is to figure out the contaminant. And so your challenge is going to be to do some research, take this data, take the symptoms, and to make an educated guess on what is the contaminant that is causing the illness. So questions?
This is interesting.
Good. Hopefully the students will think so too. So that's what I have, for tonight, in terms of the launch. I have already posted, this document that I was just showing, the task 1 that has the data. That's posted up in the Google Drive. Also up there is that timeline I was talking about and the goals. And so that's
Okay.
what's up and released so far. You know, I will go ahead and post at least a link to this recording there and put this recording up in Hopin too. And then, you know, be available to answer any questions. And then, you know, for your class, if you're doing it now or if you're doing it later, we'll just have to be in communication and, you know, see what we want to do, you know, and how to support your classes.
Maybe we can do the challenge and then you can be like a guest speaker and be like, hey, I was the lady on the video. That might be like kind of a fun.
I would love to do that. Yeah.
I have to say that the Hopkin interface is hard to find the design challenges.
Yeah,
like
I've been trying to post them at the top, but it's really hard. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if it was just because I was looking at my phone, but I actually was looking for it earlier, and I was like, if you hadn't sent me the email with it, I don't know that I would have found it.
Yeah,
and I also wasn't able to see the hand challenge video. If that's there, I wasn't able to actually.
We had a lot of trouble resolving, so I'm going to hit stop for now. So